For 36 years, my one job at every family dinner was to disappear. Then one night my sister's fiancé asked me a simple question, and by the time I finished answering it, my mother had lost control of a secret she'd been managing for over a decade. 11 months later, under a 200-year-old glass ceiling I rebuilt with my own two hands in front of a national film crew and 180 wedding guests, I said my real name out loud on camera for the first time in my life. My mother walked out of the room before the applause even started. That's the ending. Stick with me because I'm about to show you exactly how a family that spent years pretending I didn't exist ended up watching me on the news. I'm Clara Bennett. I'm 36. Welcome back to Silent Revenge, the channel where quiet people stop staying quiet. If you've ever been the one your family talked over, explained away, or laughed off, this one's for you. Comment your city and what time it is right now where you're watching. I read every single one. New here? Subscribe now because you do not want to miss where this goes. The dinner was at my parents' place in Cedar Falls, Tennessee, and I knew something was off before my coat was even off. Good china out. My sister Megan had made her famous glazed ham. I come straight from my workshop, scrubbed my hands twice, but glass grinding compound gets into your knuckles like a stain that never quits. My mom, Diane, sat me at the far end of the table, past the good candlesticks. Normal. What wasn't normal was how everyone kept glancing my way during the salad course, the way you'd eyeball a shaky ladder, bracing for it to fall. The only one who looked at me like an actual human being was Megan's fiancé, Ethan Cole. Tall, good manners, the kind of guy who turns his whole body towards you when you talk. He'd spent 10 minutes asking my dad about his tomato plants and actually remembering the answers. Then he turned to me and asked the most ordinary question in the world. So Clara, what do you do? My mom set her fork down, not slammed, set down, careful like a judge's gavel. Don't embarrass us, she said, light as asking for the butter. That's what made it land like a slap. Not anger. Routine. The table laughed, rehearsed laughter, the laughter of people who already knew their part in this. My aunt giggled into her napkin. My dad studied his ham. Megan leaned toward me with her camera-ready smile. Maybe just lie this time so you don't sound so pathetic, Claire. Ethan didn't laugh. I noticed that even then. I sat there with my hands in my lap and did what I've done at that table since I was 22. Smiled. Counted to 10 slow, the way I count seconds scoring a glass cut so it snaps clean instead of shattering. Any other year, that would have been the whole story. But that afternoon I'd come down off a 30-foot scaffold, my hands still smelled like 150 years of somebody else's patience, and something in me was tired in a brand new way. So I kept talking. I'm a glass conservator, I said, flat and level. I restore things people gave up on. My mom pivoted hard into the honeymoon question she'd clearly been saving. Megan picked it up on cue. The table rolled along, relieved, and I reached for the cornbread, sliding back into my usual role, furniture. Except Ethan hadn't moved. His glass was frozen halfway to his mouth. Wait, he said, and the table kept talking over him. Bennett louder, and the whole room went quiet. Hollow Creek Glassworks, I said. That's my shop. You did the rose window, Ethan said, laughing once, stunned, already reaching for his phone. He turned the screen around. A photo of a stained glass dome, restored, colors glowing like something poured straight out of a summer sky. I knew that dome the way you know your own signature. That's Ashford Manor, he said. My family funds Ashford Manor. You could have heard the refrigerator hum from 2 rooms over. My mom's face went hunting for something to say and came up empty. Megan's fork stopped midair. Ethan kept going, no clue he was quietly rearranging the whole room. His family ran the Cole Heritage Foundation, Historic Preservation. They'd funded the restoration of Ashford Manor, and the review committee had ranked exactly one conservator first for the ceiling project. Me, the only documented apprentice of a glazier named Walter Voss, who'd restored that same dome decades earlier. We rode to your shop twice, Ethan said. You're a hard woman to track down. Behind on my mail, I said. True. I didn't mention I'd assumed anything with fancy letterhead was junk. My mom recovered fast. "Well," she said, patting the table, "Clara dabbles. She's always been artsy." Ethan polite, dead sincere. "Mrs. Bennet, the committee doesn't rank dabblers." Nobody laughed at that one. Megan stared at me with an expression I'd never once seen aimed my way. Recalculation. The guy they'd staged this whole dinner to impress had spent the evening trying not to stare at the family embarrassment, because where he came from, the embarrassment was the celebrity. If you've ever had a moment where a total stranger saw you clearer than your own family ever did, drop your city and the time right now in the comments. I want to know how far this one travels. My mom cornered me by the sink while everyone else pretended to care about dessert plates. She's got a special voice for damage control, low businesslike, the voice of a hospital billing office, which is exactly what she ran for 26 years. "You will not take that job," she said. I asked why not. "That manor is where your sister's getting married. You'll be underfoot for months. Scaffolding and tarps while his family walks through in suits." She looked at me, and for 1 second I saw the thing underneath the whole act. Not contempt. Fear. "This wedding is bigger than your hobby, Clara. One bad impression and people start drawing conclusions about a whole family. That's all it ever takes." And there it was, her entire operating manual laid out plain. She'd never once asked if I was any good at what I did, because good was never the point. Explainable was the point. I dried my hands on her good towel and told her I'd think about it. My version of a polite lie, the one language of mine she actually speaks fluently. I drove home with the windows down. Above my workbench, taped up where Walter left it, is a curled index card in his crooked handwriting. "Nobody throws a parade for Salda. It holds the joint together anyway." At 11 that night, my laptop pinged. A formal invitation from the Ashford Preservation Trust. Subject line, "The Dome." I read it 3 times and slept better than I had in months. Megan called the next morning, half apology, half interrogation, wanting to know why I'd made it weird, our family's phrase for telling the truth somewhere that actually matters. In that call, the staring finally got explained. They'd briefed Ethan before I ever walked in. "Clara's between things. She's a little lost. Don't ask her too much." That's why the whole table had watched me all through salad like a storm front rolling in. I was a managed risk at my own family's dinner table. "It wasn't mean," Megan insisted. "Mom just wanted the night to go well." I said that sounded exhausting. She laughed, caught herself, then went quiet. In that quiet, she said the truest sentence anyone in my family has ever handed me. "You weren't supposed to matter tonight." I heard her hear it. That little intake of breath after. "I didn't mean it like that, Claire." I looked at Walter's card above the bench and felt that sentence settle into place, snug as a good joint. 36 years explained in 9 words. "Nobody ever means it," I said. That's the whole problem. I congratulated her, meant it, hung up, and typed 4 words back to the trust I'd been circling all night. I'd be honored. When? Quick backstory, since my mom's version has me wandering off some sensible path into the weeds. Here's mine. At 19, I did 1 semester of business school because my mom had a clear picture of a daughter behind a desk. That fall, an old glazier named Walter Voss got hired to fix a water-damaged window at our church, and I stayed after choir just to watch him work. 73 years old, hands like tree roots. I asked him if the window was hopeless. He said, "Nothing's ever hopeless, kid. Some things are just waiting on somebody with patience." I dropped business school by Thanksgiving. My mom didn't speak to me for a month. Dignity, she called it. I learned to call it weather. 15 years I apprenticed under him in that brick storefront, learning the one rule that runs my whole trade. Fix nothing you can't undo. Walter died 2 winters back, 88, at his workbench, the only place he'd have agreed to go. Left me the building, the tools, and a furnace with a cough like bad news waiting to happen. Here's the part one didn't clock myself for years. My sign out front just says Hollow Creek Glassworks. No first name. Turned down having my photo in the local paper 3 separate times. 17 years of work, and I had never once put my own name on a single piece. I told myself that was humility. Keep that in your pocket. We'll need it later. The trust meeting happened right in Ashford Manor's Grand Hall, theater, and it worked. Sheets over the chandeliers, arched light, and above it all, an 1897 stained glass dome, the 4 seasons circling a painted sky, grayed under a century of soot, one water stain bleeding down the east corner like an old grief nobody had cleaned up. My neck ached inside the first minute, and I did not care. The offer, dome and grand staircase, 9 months, $42,000 including materials. The job of my life. Then came the media clause. A TV series called Crafted to Last had partnered with the foundation's donors. Cameras, interviews, the finished haul filmed in use. My mouth went dry in a way $42,000 couldn't fix. I asked for a carve-out. No on-camera interviews, credit in the paperwork only. The director allowed it, and I signed with the fountain pen Walter left me. Out in the parking lot, a woman flagged me down, Mrs. Whitcomb, the retired town librarian, zero small talk. Clara Bennett. I am still cross with you. Last spring we invited you to show your church window photos at the library. You turned us down flat. Didn't even write back yourself. I'd never received any invitation. Mrs. Whitcomb, I said slowly, who told you I turned it down? Before I tell you what she said, comment your city and the time right now. This story's about to take a hard turn. One more thing about Walter because it matters. 3rd year of my apprenticeship, same church, a heavy oak altar table cracked clean across after a burst pipe. I was 21, ambitious, and wanted to make the crack vanish completely. Fillers, a whole magic trick. Walter laid his hand flat on the split. What happened to this table? A flood. So it's true then. So why are you about to make it lie? He showed me something else instead, a butterfly key, dark walnut set into pale oak, sitting proud where anyone could see it, stronger than the plank had ever been on its own. That crack has held for 15 years now. What he told me while we clamped it is the closest thing I've got to a religion. You don't hide a crack, kid. You build it strong enough to carry weight. I've lived by that with over 1,000 objects. Here's what I never once applied it to myself. My whole life inside that family was one long invisible repair. Sand it smooth, match the finish, disappear into the background. Don't be the crack in Mom's tabletop. Mrs. Whitcomb was about to hand me the chisel that finally cracked that open. Why, your mother, honey. She answers for you. I made myself check before I let that become true. First, Sunday dinner, where my mom ran her counterattack like a quarterly review. She announced, to the table not to me, that the $15,000 my grandparents had set aside for my shop would go toward wedding costs instead. Weddings come first. The furnace can wait. That furnace was 13 years past its expected lifespan. Lead solder needs a warm shop. She didn't know that fact, but she knew exactly enough to know where to press. Second shot dropped right into the gravy. Henley's Insurance is hiring, by the way. A real desk job. Something I can say out loud at church. Her one commandment, be explainable. I did the math on the drive home. 42,000 minus materials minus 9 months of living. The Ashford job could carry the shop, not a new furnace too. So I picked up night shifts restoring lamps for an antiques dealer 10 to 1 in the morning 3 nights a week. That week, Mrs. Whitcomb forwarded me an old email chain. I sat at my bench and read my own obituary written in my mom's handwriting. The library's original invitation, sent to my parents' address from my apprentice days. And the reply from my mom's account, polite as a sympathy card. My daughter is no longer working in this field. Please remove her from your list and do not contact her again. Same month, I'd finished restoring panels for the county museum. She'd seen it in the paper, no name attached, and asked why I was wasting my time on other people's junk. Mrs. Whitcomb remembered at least 2 other invitations over the years, each turned down in my name kindly. I don't think my mom sat somewhere cackling in the dark. I think she genuinely believed she was steering a stubborn daughter around potholes. Every door she closed was, in her own math, one less chance for me to embarrass her in coveralls. That's what made it worse. You can argue with cruelty. Fear doesn't listen to reason, it just keeps running. I sat there a long time, finally understanding the shape of my own life. My mom didn't hide me from the world. She hid the world from me and called it good parenting. I didn't call her. Instead, I went to work under a sky somebody painted in 1897 and I started climbing. The scaffold went up that November. First day, I laid flat on my back, an arm's length from the glass, and just looked. A swallow's wing done in 3 cuts. A harvest wagon with its wheel practically spinning in the light. That one long water stain still bleeding down the east corner. 9 months, I told it. I've got you. While I was up there, the venue coordinator called through the scaffolding, friendly as a doorbell. Big year coming. First events already locked in, August wedding, Bennett Cole party. Any relation? The scaffold didn't move. I didn't move. My sister wanted the finest venue in the county, and the finest venue in the county was about to be fine because of me, and nobody had connected those 2 dots, because connecting them meant saying my name and conservator in the same breath. Distant, I called down. The truest sentence I've ever said through a scaffold. There it was, laid out like a job sheet. Every hour of the next 9 months, I'd be restoring the ceiling of my own sister's wedding. Quick pause. If you've ever found out your own family was quietly closing doors behind your back, how'd you find out? Comment your city and the time right now. And subscribe if you haven't, because what happens when my mom finally sees my name on that contract, you need to hear that part too. My mom showed up at my workshop in December, her first time ever through that door. She stood in the middle, coat on, purse held in both hands, like a woman refusing to check her bags into my life. Withdraw from the Ashford contract. I'll give you $15,000. Call it a business decision. I asked her to walk me through the business. She did, and I'll give her this much. When she finally shows you her real ledger, she doesn't flinch. A sister up on scaffolding at the venue was a variable. A sister in coveralls during the in-laws walkthrough was a variable. One bad impression, Clara. The people decide things about a family. This one's not reversible, Mom. Rule 1 of my trade. Don't do anything you can't take back. I already signed. It's load-bearing now. She looked at me a long moment. Not anger. A number that wasn't coming out the way she'd expected. At the door, then stay off the ladders in August. The bell rang bright and stupid into all that quiet. $15,000 just to not exist at my own sister's wedding. My dad came by 2 weeks later with a box of shortbread cookies and something he needed to set down. He told me about the boots. My mom, 15 years old, at her Catholic school back in rural Ohio. Her own dad, my grandpa, a man I never met, was the school janitor for 30 years. Money was tight, so she wore his old steel-toe work boots to school one whole winter, newspaper stuffed inside so they'd fit. The girls with nice sneakers started leaving cardboard boot cutouts on her desk as a joke for months. She showed me those boots once when we were dating, my dad said. Made me swear never to bring it up again. The day you quit school for glasswork, she cried in the garage where she thought you couldn't hear. Not because the work's beneath anybody. Because she spent 40 years trying to walk away from those boots, and you walked right back toward that whole world on purpose. It doesn't make it right, he said finally, maybe the bravest sentence of his whole marriage. But you should have the full picture. He asked me not to tell her, then went home to her like he always does. I sat alone with the cookies and a brand new problem. It's a lot easier to fight a villain than it is to fight a wound wearing your mom's coat. The wedding invitation showed up in March. 2 days behind it, the phone call with the terms. Relatives flying in from 3 states. I'd attend as Megan's sister who was between jobs. Simpler that way. Don't embarrass us twice. Twice. I stood in my shop, looking at 17 years of other people's treasures getting their names back, and I want to be honest about the pull of it. Every family runs on one currency. Mine pays out in exactly one coin, being no trouble. I'd been rich in that coin my whole life. Instead, I picked up the RSVP card and wrote in the good pen, Clara Bennett, Glass Conservator, Ashford Manor. Tending. No +1. No explanation. I mailed it that hour before I could talk myself out of it. The mailbox lid clanged shut exactly like a good clean cut of glass snapping true. Some cuts you can grind back down. Some you cannot. Standing in that March wind, I understood I'd just made the second kind. My mom never called back. Her silence had a whole shape to it. Winter nights soldering lamps till 1 in the morning, 5 hours of sleep, back up the scaffold by 8. By spring, the water stain surrendered, and underneath it, a painted harvest girl nobody had seen clearly since before my grandmother was born came back into view, dirt on her feet and a smirk the original artist absolutely meant on purpose. Every few weeks, the foundation's donors came through for a walkthrough. That's how I met Vivian Cole, Ethan's mother, chair of the foundation, a woman who wore quiet the way other people wear jewelry. First visit, she climbed the scaffold in her good suit, lay flat on the deck beside me, and studied that harvest girl a full minute. Copper foil work, she said. Lead came on the original, foil for the repairs, I told her. No small talk about my clothes. Third visit, conversational as weather. You're the bride's sister. Odd, your family told us you were between jobs. I'm never between jobs, I said. Just between thank yous. She laughed exactly once, like a stuck door finally giving way. From that day on, 2 women in the whole county knew precisely what I was worth. In June, the producer from Crafted to Last came by to schedule the finale segment. I reminded him about my carve-out. He didn't argue. He did something worse. He told me the truth. We're filming the dome either way. The only thing left in your control is whether you're a name on a black screen or a woman standing under her own work. If you won't tell your own story, somebody else always will. I climbed back up after he left, and for the first time, the silence up there felt like a draft, not shelter. Staying invisible isn't the same as being humble. It's an empty seat, and empty seats get filled by whoever's closest. My mom had been narrating me for 36 years, and I'd been holding the door open by saying nothing. I could keep hiding from the camera. I couldn't keep hiding from the name I'd finally learned to sign. Megan came by in July, 7 weeks out, carrying fabric swatches as her excuse to be there. She wandered the racks, actually looked around, sat on Walter's old stool. The Coles are lovely, she said. That was the actual problem. Lovely in a language she was still learning. Mom's got the wedding scheduled down to the minute. There's even a family photo slot timed for when the crew breaks for dinner. She thinks of everything. Then, you're lucky, Claire. Nobody expects anything from you. She meant it kindly. That's the worst part. That's not luck, Megan, I said. That's a sentence. I just finished serving it. The door, she stopped. The film crew, Mom got their dinner break locked in writing. She planned around you, Clara. She always plans around you. If this story's hitting somewhere real, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this reach the people who need it. Comment your city and the time right now. We're getting close to the wedding and it's about to get good. We struck the scaffold the first Friday in August, and Ashford Manor got its sky back. Late sun through the arched windows, 130 years of soot gone, the 4 seasons wheeling overhead. Inspection passed without a single note. Then 2 men from the trust mounted a small bronze plaque by the ballroom door, standard policy. Dome and staircase restoration. C. Bennett, Hollow Creek Glassworks. 4 inches of metal. My name in public at the size of 2 fingers. I stood in front of it longer than I'll admit to on camera. made the work exist in the same world as me. Then heels on the parquet. My mom walking the room with the wedding planner. She saw the plaque. Read it like a lab result. Nothing on her face moved. Then she turned to the planner and gestured at my name. A tall plant would soften this corner, don't you think? Planner made a note. My mom walked on into the sunlit hall her own daughter had raised from the dead, still planning her fern. The night before the wedding, I did a final humidity check and used it the way people use a church after hours. I lay under my finished sky one last time and set my own terms, plain as clamping a joint. I'd go as a guest and a sister, genuinely glad because Ethan's a good man and Megan, under all the polish, is still my sister. I wouldn't perform. I wouldn't campaign. But if the truth walked up and asked a direct question, I was done lying to its face. Fit on an index card. Took 36 years to write. My phone buzzed in the dark hall. The producer. Heads up, someone from your family called the network today. Introduced herself as your spokesperson. Wanted to preview our questions. Course she had. People who spend their whole lives narrating you don't retire quietly. They have to be replaced. Producer had turned her down flat, network policy, and told me a family member had reached out per the transparency clause. My mom had called a national network to manage my segment, and all she'd actually accomplished was making sure I heard about it with plenty of time to think. Wedding morning came in hot and blue. My phone lit up at 9. Megan, just keep it vague tonight. Please. Vague. The family's word for me right to the very end. I sent back the only thing that was both true and kind. I'll be exactly your sister. Promise. I put on the sage green dress, the one thing I own that's never been near a soldering iron, and looked at myself in the mirror over Walter's old wash basin. Not between jobs. Not a little lost. A woman with 9 months of a stained glass sky in her shoulders and her own name freshly cast in bronze, walking into a wedding where the script had her cast as scenery. My mom had a plan with a fern in it. The network had a plan with a crane shot in it. I had an index card. When two forces pull a joint in opposite directions at the same time, it doesn't get to stay neutral forever. It holds or it splits along the oldest crack. I drove to my sister's wedding to find out which one I was. One question. If speaking up cost you the only version of your family that was ever kind to you, would you still do it? Answer honestly and tell me your city and the time right now. 'Cause in about 10 minutes of this story, that stopped being hypothetical for me in front of 180 guests. It was beautiful. The hall drowning in white lilies. Megan came down the grand staircase, my staircase, and even I forgot about the staircase. Ethan looked at her the way Walter used to look at pieces everyone else had already written off. I cried into an actual monogram napkin because she is my sister. My mom ran that whole event like a conductor, genuinely magnificent, every variable managed, almost everyone. Through the ceremony and into the reception, the film crew kept filming the room being alive, and the room performed right over everybody's heads. Guests kept looking up. You could watch it travel table to table. Cole cousins leaning over, asking each other, who did this? Vivian Cole raised her champagne to me across 40 feet of parquet, a toast the size of a secret. The producer clocked that toast, traced it back to me, and checked his watch against the fading light. The dinner break my mom had negotiated in writing was in 20 minutes. The segment wasn't going to wait that long. Crouched by my chair. Lights in 10. One sentence, Miss Bennett, you can say no, but I'd be lying if I told you it'd be the same film. I opened my mouth and a hand closed around my elbow. My mom, smiling at the producer. Excuse us. She's needed for family photos. She steered me through a service door into the hallway by the kitchen, then turned to me, and the smile fell off her face like a dropped price tag. Not tonight. Don't embarrass us. Third time in my life that sentence would really matter. This time I heard everything packed inside it. The boots, the newspaper stuffed inside them, 40 years spent trying to outrun where she came from. My mom, who does not negotiate, was negotiating, and that's exactly how I knew she was scared. You step into that light and announce your trade at your sister's wedding, you make the whole night about you. Do that and don't come to Sunday dinner. I mean it, Clara. 10 minutes. 180 people finishing dessert under my sky. I didn't raise my voice. Mom! The winter you were 15. The boots. Her face went white, then a furious pink. Who told you that? She stopped herself because there was only one who, and some part of her chose right then not to spend him. I understand what you've been running from my whole life, I said. I finally do. But I'm not a hand-me-down. I'm not a joke on somebody's desk. I'm the dome. I'm the thing this whole county's sitting under tonight. Her grip loosened, not letting go, recalculating. Then my mom did the last thing left in her arsenal. She let me see the actual wound. Her eyes filled, and her voice, when it came, wasn't the billing office voice anymore. Being respectable is the only thing I've ever had, Clara. The only thing. I know, I said, as gently as I've ever said anything. I'm handing it right back to you. All of it. I'm only taking my name. I lifted her hand off my elbow the way you lift a clamp once the glue's finally set. No yank, no drama. Quarter turn and it just lets go because the work is done and the joint is either strong now or it never will be. Behind me, quiet, almost to herself, you'll regret this. For the first time in my life, it sounded less like a threat and more like a real question. I pushed the door open into the light. Camera was already rolling. They killed the dance floor lights and brought up the wash on the dome, and 180 conversations went dead silent as an 1897 sky lit up over the reception. That's the whole difference light makes. The gap between a room and a moment you'll never forget. And who are you? The host asked, soft. Clara Bennett. I restored this ceiling. Took 9 months and 130 years. He asked what the work was really about underneath all the chemistry. I only ever had the one sermon. My teacher used to say, you don't hide a crack. You build it strong enough to carry weight. Everything up there has failed at least once. That's not the shameful part. That's the part holding the whole thing up. Then the question I've been bracing for since that hallway. Your family's here tonight, I understand. Who gets the credit for all this talent? The revenge was sitting right there, gift-wrapped, national audience and all. One sentence about a mom who answered other people's letters in my name for years. I looked into the lens, felt the whole thing pass through my hands and set it back down. My teacher was Walter Voss. He restored this dome the first time. Everything else I owe to this room. Applause started near the cake and moved through that hall like weather. Then stood first, then Vivian, then everybody. Camera swept the family table and found one chair empty, its napkin folded with terrible neatness. My mom had already left. Before the lights even came up. She missed the cake. She missed her own triumph, honestly. The wedding of the decade, executed to the minute, and the very last minute of it belonged to the daughter in the little green dress. My dad stayed. He stood beside me while the crew coiled cables, holding 2 glasses of champagne like they were evidence. The janitor's granddaughter, he said finally. Would you look at you now? Megan found me by the plaque, mascara gone completely abstract. You didn't lie this time. I never did. She looked up at the ceiling of her own wedding for a long moment, doing math that usually takes people decades. This is the prettiest room I've ever stood in. It always was, I guess. We just couldn't see it before. It just needed somebody patient, I said. She hugged me and whispered the fern was mine to move. She'd already signed off on the request herself. That night, upstairs over the shop, my inbox did something new. 4 museums. 2 churches. An auction house. A university craft program. All before midnight. And one text from my mom time-stamped 9:41 p.m. which in plain English basically said, the plant would have looked nicer. I laughed alone in my kitchen until the kettle joined in. I didn't answer. Some joints you leave unclamped and just let the wood decide. The segment aired the following spring. 12 minutes on a stained glass dome, 40 seconds of a woman in sage green telling the truth about cracks. Here's the aftermath, kept honest because I don't deal in miracles. The shop's booked out 3 years. I hired 2 apprentices. The furnace is new, I paid for it myself, which matters to me in a way I think accountants would understand. My family didn't fall apart because families like mine don't fall apart. They rebrand. My mom still tells the same women at church. My daughter works with museums. The fern never comes up. The wedding gets described as featured on national television, source left gracefully vague. What actually changed is smaller than that and somehow bigger too. Doesn't run my life anymore. Sunday dinners went on fine without me, and the strangest discovery of that year was realizing I wasn't even hungry at that hour. My dad stops by every other Wednesday, drinks his coffee in the good chair, learns the names of different glass types the way other men learn batting averages. Sometimes love is just showing up on alternate Wednesdays. A year later, Megan came by a second time, no excuse needed, carrying our grandmother's jewelry box with the hinge torn clean out. Sat on Walter's old stool 2 hours, asked real questions, used the word provenance correctly, and grinned at herself for it. Then one Wednesday, my dad brought me something wrapped in a dish towel, holding it the way you'd hold somebody else's newborn. My grandmother's teacup, the one nobody was ever allowed to wash. Broken into 3 pieces, hidden in a drawer for years the way we hide the things that shame us. Tucked inside the towel, one line in handwriting I'd know anywhere. If you have the time. No apology attached. No signature needed. My mom doesn't speak that language, and at 61 she isn't about to start learning it now. But handing me a broken thing and trusting me to fix it was the longest sentence she has ever said to me in my whole life. I repaired it kintsugi style, gold dust in every seam, the breaks made brighter than the original glaze ever was. Strong enough to hold. I sent it back with no bill attached. Some repairs you don't do for the money. You do them because they belong on the record. I'm Clara Bennett, 37 now. When strangers ask what I do these days, there's a bronze plaque, a national broadcast, and a 3-year wait list that I'll answer before I even open my mouth. I answer anyway. Out loud. First person. Every single time. If there's one thing I've learned worth what it cost me, it's this: you can spend forever waiting for your family to finally say your name right, or you can go ahead and say it yourself and let the work speak for the rest. If this story stuck with you, share it with somebody whose work is going unseen right now. They need to hear this one today. And if you believe quiet skill outlasts loud opinions every time, hit subscribe to Silent Revenge. There's a brand new story every week about people who stopped staying quiet, and I promise you one of them is going to sound exactly like yours. Drop your city and what time it is right now where you're watching down in the comments. I read every single one. See you in the next story.